Welcome to 100 Yards of Football this morning. Today we have a college football special. We're going to have our LSU football team preview 2023. So if you like the video this morning, please come in and share it. I'm your host, Vincent Turner, and today joining me to break down what LSU is going to be like in the 2023 season is the gentleman we had on last week. He's from the state of Louisiana. He went to Northeastern Louisiana, but he's also an LSU fan, Mr. Tommie Woods. So if you like the video, please come in and share it this morning. And special thanks to our producer, Mr. Logan Land. Shouldn't think about wins, to Mr. Jeremiah Long for making it happen this morning here on 100 Yards Football. I hope Mr. Long don't break my neck after the show for saying that, but I surely appreciate him, and he knows I love him. So, Mr. Woods, how you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing great this morning, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about the number 5 team in the country. In a lot of preseason polls and preseason magazines, the LSU Tigers. And one of the things that's important that we're going to start to show off with today, let's talk about their offensive line coming into this season.
Well, LSU has, on last year, their offensive line was pretty young. So they have 4 returning starters this year. And it's been anchored by Will Campbell and Emory Jones. And really, LSU had some issues last year with the offensive line due to him being so young. The quarterback, Jalen Daniels, he wasn't able to stand in the pocket and be able to pass like he's capable of passing. So they're definitely going to be a whole lot better this year. Like I said, they got 4 starters returning, and the 2 young men that I named are going to be the ones that are going to be anchoring the offensive line.
When I think about LSU coming into the season, I'm going to start with their season from 2022. It was a surprise.
Yes.
Didn't nobody think they was going to win the SEC West.
Right.
And the big win over Alabama. And I give kudos to head coach Brian Kelly. But
Yes.
think about this with Brian Kelly, and I got a lot of respect from Coach Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
He left Notre Dame.
Yes.
A lot of other coaching jobs across the country. He said, you know what? I want to come to the tough, big bag SEC. And he chose the toughest conference because he went into the SEC West going up against Alabama. And we didn't know what the LSU team was going to be like because they lost a very disappointing opening game against Florida State and won with a blocked extra point. But offensively, as we talk about the offensive line, they came in very young. Will Campbell and Emory Jones, the 2 starting tackles, were true freshmen. And you brought up another good point. Jalen Daniels was sacked 43 times last year. But you know what? The offensive line improved at the end of the year. And you saw the turnaround, and LSU ended up winning the SEC West. But another big key, I think, that was key with the offensive line improvement is the play of Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
The offensive line started to play very well in the middle of the season. You saw what Mr. Daniels did. 3,800 total yards, 29 combined touchdowns, over 885 yards rushing. And I go back to the LSU game, a pivotal game in the middle of the season. He had an outstanding game. I think he accounted for 5 touchdowns.
Yes, sir.
And overall, you're looking offensively. This is an LSU team. Now, your offensive line was a mess, but it got together at the end of the year. But now it's going to be one of your strengths because when you look at it, Will Campbell and Emory Jones are going to be in the NFL one day. But what I like more about LSU offense, Jalen Daniels is the top returning quarterback. Mm-hmm. No question about it. Can we agree on that? He is the best quarterback in the SEC right now as the season started. But most of all, the wide receiver position, a wealth of talent. Riches, Malik Neighbors, 72 receptions for almost 1,000 yards coming back. Brian Thomas, 361 yards, 5 touchdowns. Then Kyrie Lacey, young man out of Southeast Louisiana who had 24 receptions last year. They say he might be the best receiver coming out of spring practice because he had a 7-yard touchdown on the first play in spring practice. Then you got Aaron Anderson, the Alabama transfer. And to me, they got one of the best young tight ends returning in the country, Mason Taylor, Jason Taylor's baby son. He had 38 receptions last year, caught the winning touchdown against Alabama. And then when you look at all that, what they got from the offensive side of the ball, the receiver position, the running back position. Now, Josh Williams only had 532 yards last year.
Mhm.
But that's because the offensive line was young, as you brought up Mr. Woods. But now
Yes.
with them being a little more year seasonal, and I think they're going to be the most improved offensive line in the country. Josh Williams in the running game, he might be Dalton Hillard too.
Mhm.
Gary James too. Harvey Williams too.
Yeah.
Charles Ray Alexander too. All-American in 1979. Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the 2019 team. So I think LSU is going to really have an outstanding running game. And when you're looking at that, I expect their offense is going to be a top 5 offense in the country because last year they averaged 34 points a game and they
Mhm.
all had over 453 yards total offense. But that was with the offensive lines you said that was really young and really struggling. Now let's switch sides of the ball. Let's talk about the defensive side of the
Okay.
ball.
All right.
What you
Well,
think? What do you think defensively?
well,
Harold Perkins, led by Harold Perkins.
well, on the defensive side of the ball last year, the last five to seven games, the defense gave up over 31 points, even though they won some of those games, but they gave up a lot of points. So the defensive line is going to have to do a better job. And they've got some young men that are coming in that are going to be helping this process. And Harold Perkins, he led the team in tackles last year. And this is going to give him a chance to fly all over the field. He has some other cohorts that are going to help him with that defense. You got Omar Speights, and you got Stavion Jones. You got Brandon Swinson. Braylon Swinson. These guys are going to help on that defensive end interior where they're going to be pushing pressure from the outside. That way, the linebackers are going to be able to, they can cover the holes, they can shoot the gaps, and then you got your defensive backfield back there. You got the defensive line. You got Michael Wingo, and then you got big time Mason Evans. I'm sorry, not Mason Evans, but Mason Smith, who's going to be pushing. They're going to be pushing pressure on that front line because LSU had an issue with getting into the backfield last year, so they got to do a better job this year of putting that defensive pressure on that line and the defensive end. So the linebackers, if they decide that they're going to blitz, that wouldn't leave the defensive backfield by themselves.
Defensively, the one key is this right here with LSU. Last year, Harold Perkins had his coming out party as a true freshman. But I say this, if LSU's defense plays up to a level, want to say top 30 in the
Mhm.
country, LSU will be in the college football playoffs. But what I took from LSU's off defense is just very, very serious. They got a big time player in Harold Perkins. When you talk about
Yes.
Harold Perkins as a true freshman, you got to go back and think about all the other great defensive players just played this game at the linebacker position. He
Yes.
puts me in the mind of Jerry Robinson that played at UCLA. He's got that skill set of Lawrence Taylor when he was at North Carolina. The skill set of LeVar Arrington who was at Penn State coming off the edge. He's got that tackling ability. Now they move him to the middle of Mike Singletary. But what I like about the young man, we always go by a thing here, 100 yards of football. Actions. Actions
Yes.
for Harold Perkins last year, first team All-American as a true freshman, 72 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. You understand what I'm saying? 1 interception, four forced fumbles.
Yes, sir.
Very athletic, may be the best defensive player in the country.
Yes.
That's in a lot. And
Yes.
another thing about Mr. Perkins, he played very well at the end of the year. The
He did.
Arkansas game, 4 sacks, 8 tackles.
Yes, sir.
Against Alabama, he had 7 quarterback pressures, 8 tackles in that big win. Even in the SEC championship game against Georgia, where LSU lost 50-30, he still had 10 tackles.
Yeah.
But looking at him at the linebacker position, that's where the strength of their defense is going to be. I like Greg Penn the third coming back with 7-8 tackles returned. Then, as you just mentioned, they got the transfer, first team All Pac-12 as a true freshman, Mr. Omar Speights, who's now played 4 years at Oregon State. But look at his stat line, 308 career tackles, 25 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. LSU is going to have a strong defensive linebacker position. Then you're looking at the D tackle position. Mr. Wingo, the transfer of Missouri coming over last year, ended up becoming a big time player. Then Mason Smith getting hurt on the first play against Florida State. Listen to me real closely out there, LSU fans, and to you, listen, Mr. Woods. To me, When I look at both of them play, I'm thinking about 1989, the University of Miami. They had Russell Maryland and Cortez Kennedy.
Yeah.
They got that potential. Can you say all Americans?
Yes, sir.
Those guys are going to play just like them two gentlemen did. And you know what happened that year? Miami won the national championship, and Mr. Russell Maryland became a first-round draft pick in 1981, and Cortez Kennedy became a first-round draft pick in the NFL draft in 1990. If LSU has any problem, it's going to be in the secondary. Last year, they gave up 239 yards in the air. And as you said, they gave up a lot of points in the year. And they losses, they gave up 40 points against Tennessee. They gave up 31 points against Bryce Young in Alabama. They gave up 38 points against Texas A&M. They gave up 50 points against Georgia. The problem was they had serious problems in the secondary. But I like what Coach Kelly has done. He went into the transfer portal. And look what he got. He got Deuce Chestnut out of Syracuse. Now, Devin Harris was a former 5-star recruit coming out of Texas A&M, got suspended for that team. If he comes on, keeps his head straight, he's going to be a player. Then they got J.K. Johnson out of Ohio State. Then Zach Alexander out of Southeast Louisiana. So I think they're going to be better at the corner position. And then you're looking at the safety position. They got a lot of experience coming back. Major Burns has played a lot of football. Greg Brooks has played a lot of football. Sage Ryan has played a lot of football. But the key is going to be at the cornerback position. Can Devin Harris or Deuce Chestnut or J.K. Johnson out of Ohio State or Zach Alexander out of Southeast Louisiana can step up? If that happens, you're going to have a football team that's going to be a top 5 football team. But we're going to learn a lot about LSU come time, opening game September the 3rd against Florida State in Orlando.
Well, you know, they always say that defense is what wins championships, and they do, because LSU's, the year that they did win the last national championship, they had a great offense, but they had a super defense too, because like I said, linebacker play, defensive back play, you know, and that defensive tackle, defensive end that are putting pressure on that quarterback and on those running backs. And when those running backs are coming out of that backfield, you know, you got to have your linebackers don't have to be able to cover. You know, they can't let somebody go past that initial line of scrimmage and get past them, where the quarterback can roll out and dump it off to the running back, or he can find a receiver, run a crossing pattern, you know, running down the middle of the field. So the defense, the defensive anchors is definitely going to be Harold Perkins and the linebackers.
Your final words about this football team coming into 2023.
Well, you know, I'm excited about the football season, because we know on September the 9th, there's going to be a lot of things going on down in the booth. We know that the GSU Tigers, HBCU, will be taking on the LSU Tigers on September the 9th. And across town, you will have the Southern Jaguars, who will be at home against the Jackson State Tigers. So, you know, it's going to be going down in the booth September the 9th. And, you know, me and my wife and some of my family members, we've already made arrangements to be in the place. And I just know that LSU, with the schedule that they do have, you know, opening up at Florida State, just like they did last year, you know, losing a heartbreaker. But, you know, like I said, you can't worry about how you start. It's how you finish. And I just feel like the biggest task of all, the SEC is tough anyway, but the biggest task of all is going to be going through the Crimson Tide. You know, that is going to be the path that LSU is going to have to take to get to the college playoffs.
My final words today about the LSU Tigers 2023. A lot of respect for Brian Kelly. I thought last year he did an outstanding job coming in, winning 10 games in his first year and in the toughest conference in all of college football. I think he's assembled a very talented coaching staff. And then when you look at it offensively, he's got the best returning quarterback in the conference in Jaden Daniels. Can I say it one more time? Young man, over 3,800 total yards offense, 29 combined touchdowns. And they have, to me, a wealth of talent at the receiver position. What's going to keep LSU out of the college football playoffs, as me and Mr. Woods just stated here on 100 yards, so it's going to be their defense. Now, one more time, they got one of the best defensive players that's came a long time in college football, in Harold Perkins. But to me, it's going to be in the secondary. You make improvements there, giving up 239 yards a game. And if your transfers play at a high level, Mr. Denver Harris, Mr. Deuce Chestnut, Mr. J.K. Johnson, and Mr. Zach Alexander, LSU is going to be in the college football playoffs. And you're going to see a repeat of 2019 where the Tigers are going to be in the college playoffs where they belong. Much kudos to Brian Kelly. I think he's one of the top 3 college football coaches in America. The
Yes.
coach of 2 major schools, Notre Dame, I don't think you really appreciate him. He's down at LSU, and I think he's going to win some national championships when it's all said and done. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it here on 100 Yards Football. Thank you again for Mr. Tommie Woods coming out of Grambling, Louisiana today, previewing the LSU Tigers with me. To my producer, to Mr. Jeremiah Long. Thank you today, man. You was outstanding. And to the team of 100 Yards Football, special thanks to my business partner from Brooklyn, New York, Mr. Ronnie Keebler. To our gentleman, NFL great, by way of the Atlanta Falcons, by way of Florida State University, Mr. Bobby Butler. Thank you. To Mr. Logan Landers, thank you for making it happen on Wednesdays for us here on 100 Yards Football. Thank you to the voice here on 100 Yards Football, Mr. Mark Denham. Thank you, brother. And of course, final words to the man who's been a tremendous impact in my life the last 2 months, who has really brought a lot of love to 100 Yards Football, to Mr. Jim Maryland, Southern baseball great. And listen to this one more time. There's been 87 NFL drafts in the history of the National Football League. 87 players who went #1 overall. Mr. Jim Maryland's son, 1991, is part of that elite group of 87 players going #1 overall. Think about that. I'm blessed today on 100 Yards of Football. Thank you. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to everyone that supported us. Y'all have a blessed day and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you here on 100 Yards of Football.